Hello. Sorry.
Just keep it here.
Mask போடணுமா மாஸ்க்
இது வச்சுக்கோங்க.
ஸோ இது ஆப்ரேட் பண்ணணும். Okay. Good morning, everyone present here and whoever there in Streamline. I'm Vignesh Murugan, going to complete my MPT from CMC Vellore. Today, I'm going to talk about why and how to promote physical activity in individuals with osteoarthritis, especially knee hand. So before going into the presentation, I'm just going to be clear on what physical activity mean by any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscle work that increases energy expenditure above the resting level. So and also there will be one question: is this different from exercise or same? How it is different? Physical activity can be incidental or structured. Structured in the sense, exercise is a type of physical activity which is structured, especially planned, and will be purposeful, either to maintain or increase our beneficial effects of exercises. And then it can be incidental, like I'm standing here and presenting. I'm spending more energy than you sitting and listening, and you are spending more energy than from viewers who's lying in their bed and watching the video. So it could be incidental, which spent in leisure time, or during transport time, or during your home activities, self-care activities, or during your work activities. So is there any doubt between like what is exercise, physical activity? Exercise is a type of physical activity. Physical activity encompasses more than exercises. Any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscle work. So we'll see the first component, why we need to promote physical activity in individuals with osteoarthritis. I'll start with the question. From osteoarthritis, what are the negative health effects patient experience? Like sign and symptoms. Pain. Primary complaint, pain. Laziness from OA. Because of pain. Reduced physical activity. Okay. Okay. Reduced physical function leads to reduced quality of life, etc., etc. Decreased proprioception, increased fall of risk, etc. Okay. What could be the worst outcome from any condition, any disease condition? What could be the worst outcome from a disease condition? Not be restriction of movements. Anything worse than that from any disease condition, not only OA. This is another question. Restrict movement. Any worse outcome from a disease condition than that? Compromise in the lifestyle. Anything worse than that? Inactivity. Anything worse than that? So worst outcome from a disease condition is death. Death is the ultimate, like we want to prevent, and then comes quality of life and other things. So in individuals osteoarthritis, there is increased rate of mortality, either disease specific or all cause mortality. So individuals with osteoarthritis face death more than individuals with with healthy counterparts. And what can be the cause? Is this directly related to OA? Might not be. Individuals with osteoarthritis, there is more like occurrence of comorbidities. They are prone to comorbidities, mainly cardiovascular diseases, cognition related like dementia, and type 2 diabetes mellitus, and cancer like this. These are the primary causes for increased mortality rate in OA. So what is the connection between this and physical activity? So physical activity, or we can say physical inactivity, is the most underappreciated causal factor for all these comorbidities and OA. Majority of people with osteoarthritis, they are having less activity, in sense reduced upright activities, or reduced work, or reduced sit to stand movement, or reduced walking than their healthy counterparts, or their physical activity like achieving recommended level from national bodies, they are achieving less than healthy counterparts. So and okay, this is due to physical inactivity. Whether physical activity, promoting physical activity, can it reduce mortality in these patients who are having comorbidities or OA? We'll see this table of article. Don't confuse with all the numbers. I'm just going to talk about 4 numbers. This is from a cohort from USA, published in 2020, last year, from data of like 4,80,000 people. So first, in this side we can see all cause mortality, and later disease specific mortality from cardiovascular, cancer, diabetes mellitus. These are patient group, individuals group, who are meeting physical activity criteria, both aerobic and strengthening, aerobic alone, strengthening alone, who are not meeting. If you see physical activity, patients who achieving the physical activity recommendation, both aerobic and strengthening, their mortality risk is 0.60. That is, there is 40% risk reduction in people who achieving or meeting the physical activity recommendation. 40% reduction in the sense, like, if this is mean follow up is 9 years. So in 9 years, if 100 people is going to die from all cause mortality, any causes, only 60 people who are achieving the physical activity recommendation will die. Like 40% risk reduction in individuals who are meeting the physical activity recommendation. Then this is all cause mortality. Then we'll see cardiovascular disease specific mortality. There is 50% risk reduction. And then in cancer, there is 40% risk reduction. And then in diabetes mellitus, there is 53% risk reduction. Mean follow-up is 9 years from this study. So we can see physical activity reduces mortality in people with comorbidities. But and also, is there any dose relationship, or how can we perceive? There is another study which seeing other 2 chronic health disease with apart from this. Another 2 is type 2 diabetes mellitus and ischemic heart disease. They are finding every 10 met, that is metabolic equivalent, like during rest, when lying, whatever amount of energy you spend is 1 met. So we can calculate is like 10 times the met. So I'm standing, it will be next to close to like 3 something, anywhere like that. So every 10 met increase in energy expenditure, it reduces the risk of dying from diabetes is 4%, and dying from cardiovascular disease is 12%. We having connection between mortality and physical activity, and also it has having a dose response relationship. And what about OA? Is that reducing mortality directly in individuals with OA? This article, they tried to find 9 more other chronic diseases. OA was one of that, but there was no article which directly looks for reduction in mortality in OA and physical activity. So up to now we can be sure physical activity reduces the mortality from comorbidities or all cause specific mortality, and OA individuals having high mortality because of comorbid diseases. So you can, some of us might think pain from OA, it is due to wear and tear. Why I'm telling to increase the physical activity. But OA is not caused by mechanical wear and tear. Studies in the last decade, they are finding that OA appears to be caused from chronic low-grade inflammation in the joint. This is similar to chronic inflammation which you can find in comorbid diseases. In joint specifically, there is synovial and chondrocyte-derived inflammatory mediators high in rate. In OA individuals, and also there is like adipose tissue-derived inflammatory mediators. Nothing but there's chronic low-grade inflammation is going on in OA individuals, and exercise is having direct opposite anti-inflammatory effects either in the whole body or specific to the joints. It increases, after activity, interleukin 10, that is like protective chemical for joint. It increases in level after physical activity, and also exercises reduces joint hostile chemical, that is interleukin 6, cytokine and other inflammatory mediators. With physical activity, your joint friendly chemicals is produced in high quantity, and also it reduces these inflammatory mediators. So from here you can get physical activity is not detrimental to the joint in individuals with osteoarthritis, but it is beneficial for the disease process and for the symptom. So from here we got why we need to promote physical activity in individuals with OA, but how to promote it. This is the next section of the presentation. Before going into how to promote it, we should know what to promote. Physical activity in the sense, what physical activity, how much physical activity. There are physical activity guidelines from various sources like EULAR, European League Against Rheumatism, or WHO guidelines, or ACSM guidelines, or physical activity guidelines for Americans. There are a lot of bodies which recommending physical activity for healthy individuals and also for people with chronic diseases. We can see from 2008 and up to recent guidelines 2018, they are recommending people with chronic diseases including osteoarthritis to follow the same guidelines for healthy counterparts, healthy individuals. Whatever recommendation, physical activity recommendation given for healthy individuals can be followed by people with chronic diseases. So what is the recommendation level? We can separate it into like type of activities they are promoting. One is aerobic activity, moderate vigorous intensity, at least from 150 minutes per week to 300 minutes per week, and strengthening at least 2 or more days in a week. And then elderly individuals and also people with chronic diseases can also do other activities like balance activities or specific function related activities. And here we can have a doubt, what is moderate intensity, what is vigorous intensity, how can I convert into the patient which I am saying, how can I tell them. So first we'll see like theoretically what is absolute intensity. As I told before, metabolic equivalent, which is like energy expenditure during resting level, and there are activities like given how much METs is required to do certain activities. You can see here normal sitting, resting, lying in bed is 1 METs, sitting will be 1.5, standing like shaving, those kind of activity will be near to 2.5, and slow walk or in showering, those will cause around 3. Light manual work in houses like cleaning, those things will happen, METs will be around 3.5. Leisure activities, playing cricket, somewhat around 5. So little more increased activity like sports involving badminton, like around 6. More than that, running in vigorous intensity, running and other high intensity sports will be around 7.8. So these are for us, for medical people. How can we measure this? We can ask them the activities they are doing, we can somewhat correlate, but these will be useful for research purpose, but for clinical aspects we can have another type of intensity we can measure, relative intensity. That is, first one is absolute intensity, direct equal to that METs, but relative intensity, each individuals can have different fitness level, different capabilities. Each activity, playing badminton can be easy for one individual but difficult for other individual. So this relative intensity sees how much difficulty each individual perceive, how they feel, we can measure that. We can use BOD scale, rate of perceived exertion, or we can simply use VAS scale for this visual analog scale. So 5 to 6 represents moderate activity, 7 to 8 or more than that represents vigorous activity. Simply you can use VAS scale to measure intensity for their activities, or you can simply guide them in, to measure the talk test during whatever activity they are doing, home activities or leisure activities like walking. Ask them to talk. If they can able to talk but not sing, that is moderate level intensity. If they find difficulty to talk more than a sentence before taking in some breath, that's gives up like vigorous intensity. But for people with chronic diseases, some instruction has been given. So it is not, if people with chronic diseases cannot able to meet the recommended level for adults, still there are beneficial effect whatever activity they do than being inactive. Before there was like there has been promotion like minimum 10 minutes of bouts have to be followed by patients to have a beneficial effect. Less than that there is no beneficial effect. At least there has to be lower threshold, should has to be 10 minutes. But now in the recent guidelines it has been removed. So any activity like even 2 minutes, 5 minutes, any activity is having beneficial effect. There is no lower threshold for the beneficial effect of for physical activity. So this is one instruction. There is no minimum threshold. And next, if they can't able to achieve the recommended level, still they can do whatever they can do. No activity is worse than any activity, or any activity is better than worse, inactive. Next, they should be consulted by healthcare professionals to learn how to modify activities, to have education about that disease condition and physical activity, and also they should modify according to their disease severity and symptom severity all the activities. Modify in sense we can promote like any, if they are having pain after physical activity or any exercises, if it persists more than 24 hours, we might ask them to reduce the dose, either frequency, intensity, duration, or anything we can do that. If it comes to the same level of pain or less than that within 2-3 hours, definitely they can go with that intensity or beyond that. And also this is not only about walking or leisure time running, those things. It is also about how we be in our daily environment, that is in work, in home activities. Like standing, I am spending more energy than sitting. Simple, you can ask patient to do some activities, anything like cutting vegetables in standing than in sitting, or like watching TV by lying, ask them to do in sitting. So by converting that daily activities, like physical activity having different domains, work, house, transport. So you can ask any activities that increases their energy expenditure. Like mostly OA comes in elderly people. Mostly I heard like they go for shops to buy milk and morning newspaper. You can ask them to go to some shop which is like far from their house, like 2-3 streets after, then nearby. They can ask them to, if they are in ground floor or first floor, they can you can ask them like to use more steps, or anything that makes them, any activities from sitting then standing. In work, if you they can stand and work then sitting, somewhat there is no lower threshold, as I told. Any activity is better than inactivity. So whom to promote? Okay, now we know what to promote. Whom to promote? Can I recommend all these instructions should I give to all the patient I see? Recommendation for physical activity in literature, it is there for last 2 decades. But what is lacking is the assessment and promotion of physical activity in a clinician setup. So we having different scales, questionnaires and other methods which needs more personal requirement or cost requirement or time requirement, which is not feasible like other techniques. Feasible is questionnaires, simple questionnaires. There are different types like global, which are having only 2-3 items, which measures whether they are meeting the recommended levels or not, like only through 2-3 items, like exercise vital sign. Or there can be short call questionnaires which will require 10 minutes kind of assessment, and it can have from items like 7 to 20 items. That is IPAC short, IPAC long. We can see how those questionnaires look like. So the 5 question. Yes, yes, yes. So this is physical activity vital sign. This is asked about only 2 to 3 questions. From this, you can see whether they are meeting the guidelines or not. If they are not meeting, you are going to promote. Simple. This won't take like more than 1 minute or 30 seconds. They are asking how many days per week you engage in this intensity activity and how long it is. If you want, you can also ask about strengthening activities. And this questionnaire might take 5 to 10 minutes. Only 7 items. Like in the last 7 days, how much vigorous activity you do, how long it is, how much moderate activity, how long it is. They are giving options. You can refer those activity scales which I told. You can ask how long you're doing these activities, walking, sitting. So you can get knowledge about how they spend their day in the last week. This might take 5 minutes. And this is a little long, IPAC long. This asks about different domains. As I told, job, occupation is one domain. Transportation is the other domain. Housework. Recreation, that is leisure time, whatever you do in leisure time. So same, it's asked about like what are you doing, like vigorous intensity or moderate intensity, how long you are doing. And also it also asks about walking, sitting. So how to go to my slides? No, so I want to go to my slide. Physical activity can prevent more than 35 chronic diseases. It can treat more than 25 chronic diseases. But still, even like before 6 months, or usually the assessment of physical activity and promotion of physical activity is not adequate, not only in our country but everywhere. From studies from UK, New Zealand, everywhere it is, promotion is far less. Like measuring vital sign like BP or sugar level in medical setup, assessing physical activity should be like a vital sign for us for physiotherapists. Whether they are reaching or not reaching, it will be like simple, only 2 to 3 items we are going to ask. So whether they are meeting, fine, good. If they are not meeting, promotion of physical activity is much important, not only to OA but far other chronic diseases and also to healthy individuals. So this is about assessing. Fine, it's easy to talk about assessing, implementing physical activity, but in reality, if we promote physical activity, patients or individuals following it is the paramount task. It is not always easy as we speak. So what are the barriers for it, or what are the facilitated? Yes. Yes. So it's not always easy to follow a behavioral change, let it be physical activity or any habit. It's hard to leave, it's hard to drop off, or it's hard to gain. So what are the, I want to know what are the barriers you face in implementing physical activity or exercise in patients, especially HOA? Time will main.
I'm doing all sorts of household activities.
Yes.
So why I have to do those exercises?
Yes. Usually, feel like homemakers, they do all the outdoor shows, and also farmers I've noted they are doing much physical activity in their work than what we recommending. So these any other barriers you facing in implementing exercise or physical activity in patients?
Just think about the neighbors, so they are digging the hole, so they have strenuous activities. So I
Yes.
don't have time to do that, so because I'm very tired.
Okay, no time.
So
Tired.
wherever we go, so same questions we are experiencing. So we don't have time.
Yes, definitely. And also it could be like severe symptoms from OA. It could be like that. What else I saw? There will be not space to do physical activity. No parks beside, or there is no like empty roads to walk, or it is not safe. They feel, or they can go to terrace, but climbing flight of stairs will be difficult for them before reaching there. And any other barriers you face? It will be nice. Like we are in different setup. If you share.
Maybe some fear factor, the pain may flare.
Pain might flare. Definitely in the education setup, I mean in education, you have to mention this. Flaring of pain is common, is normal for individuals with osteoarthritis, and it will come down. So you don't have to worry. So these assurance is definitely important in physical activity. So fear of pain, they'll reduce their movement. So this is from systematic review of qualitative studies, which collects perceived barriers and facilitators for exercise or physical activity in individuals with osteoarthritis. So first we'll see barriers facilitators related to physical health. First we'll see barriers, pain, as you said, pain along physical activities, and also with other symptoms, fatigue, stiffness, and also sense of reduced ability. Either their age, usually elderly people, is common in OA, and also perceive less ability due to other diseases, comorbidities along with them, and old age, lack of fitness. These are the barriers for physical activity. And what are the facilitators? Usually, I mean, we would have been experienced already physically active individuals. They'll be pakka in following exercises, and they'll be happy to follow exercises and learn exercises. These are the facilitators. And pain relief. If they have experienced pain relief from physical activity or exercise, especially physically active individuals, they would have experienced pain relief after exercises or in the long term. So that will facilitate their adherence to physical activity or exercise, and improvement in other symptoms. Usually we can see patients telling like after getting up in the morning or after some period of rest, they're finding some stiffness. Initial few months will be difficult, but afterward they'll feel ease with the activity. Simple, as I told before, physical activity promotes anti-inflammatory mediators and it reduces inflammatory mediators. Physical activity, you're having stiffness, inflammatory mediators. So next is about psychological factors. There are different domains here. First we'll see experiences and belief about exercises. As I said, experiencing benefits from physical activity, it acts as a facilitator, and also sense of psychosomatic well-being. Their self-efficacy might improve, the stress will be reduced, they'll be less anxious after physical activity, and also accurate knowledge about knowing physical activity is not detrimental to my joint. It does not it does not increase my disease severity. Knowing the correct knowledge, correct information enables them to follow, to adhere exercises. And barriers, like opposite, if they would have experienced severe pain after exercises, there are less, they're having less chance to follow it, and not experiencing the anticipated benefits, and belief that nothing can be do about this condition. Like they will tell like OA is having no cure, what I'll do, there are no other ways, is there no cure, like these beliefs like can disable them, like thinking there is no cure, so what is the need to follow exercises. Next is behavior regulation. People should be in the attitude like if it flare ups, I'm going to modify my exercises, but I will do my exercises after. So keep going despite of OA or symptoms is facilitating factors. It shows that the patient is having locus of control with them, that they having the belief that they can modify. I mean they can manage their disease condition. It shows their personality of adapting and initiating. Those things are the facilitating factors. And as I told, adjusting prioritization. As Hannah told, most people can't prioritize physical activity in their daily schedule because of work or household chores, responsibilities or roles. This will prevent them from making physical activity as priority. Mostly healthy individuals or physical active individuals, you can see they will fit physical activity into their daily routine, and they told like I mean they have been reported here like they are making conscious effort so that they are following physical activity. Physical activity or doing regularly following a habit requires conscious effort. And also barriers is the opposite: lack of motivation, behavioral regulation, and resigned attitude. Anyway, there is no cure, what I'm going to do about it. Emotion, following exercise should be fun. It can be by group activities or socializing or the type of activities they enjoy. They will follow only if it is fun. And barriers, OA related stress. This is lifelong problem. They could have been disabled or their life roles would have been diminished because of this. Social health professionals play a significant role. We have to educate them, we have to promote physical activity and other things, and also supervision enables them, like they believe like if they are seeing me doing exercises, I'm doing the right activities, I'm going to increase my health. So those beliefs will improve their adherence if they are supervised. And advice and prescription by doctors, promoting physical activity not only from physiotherapists, from other healthcare departments. It will be easy to make the patient understand if they already been told physical activity is good for you. I have experienced this. Doctor sonnaanga, amma correct da. It will be more easy for them to understand. And barriers, lack of.
They won't say like that, right?
They never feel like it.
I can understand, but the proportion is different. I think. I mean, I got inspired promoting physical activity from an orthopedician. I was like in an observationship. One orthopedician was like promoting every patient who is obese, every patient who is having arthritis. So one orthopedician inspired me into these topics. And also ambiguous or no information about physical activity or contradicting information about physical activity. It makes them to not adhere to it. So last, social support. Their family, if they are understanding and supporting them by sharing their other works, they can adhere to exercises. And barriers, opposite. Physical environment, it will be costly to come, like so I told supervised session is good, but coming again to physiotherapy session might be costly. And other things, having a facility. And also cold weather and safety issues. So I think so from knowing these facilitators and barriers, we are going to use those facilitators and we are going to diminish those barriers. That's why like I have put so much slides on it. And to improve adherence, we can use education, nature of the disease, nature of physical activity, how it helps in their disease, how to follow physical activity, and how to modify physical activity. Definitely in OA, if there is flare up, how to modify, how to reduce, not like limiting their physical activity, but to reduce the dose, those kind of. And booster sessions, okay, they are coming like 10 days or 2 weeks, 1 week of OA, but they can come even after 2 months, just one session, how they are doing their physical activity, or even after 2 years follow-up, there are studies. So booster session, it seems, help them to adhere to physical activity, and also reassurance that having flare-ups are common, and also to educating them how to modify their physical activity according to it, and also few other things. Goal setting shows to improvise their adherence. Activity monitoring, like we can use nowadays, like technology, like in smartphones and smartwatches, we can see it shows heart rate, number of steps they taken in a day. I'm not sure about the validity, but still it can show the difference between being inactive and somewhat active. Something like ordinal, you are highly active or less active. They can get feedback, and also it gives them motivation to do more. And behavioral graded exercises, that is like, it is not necessary to give 150 minutes of, section of 150 minutes of moderate activity on the first day. We're going to measure how much they are already being active in a day or in a week. We're going to increase a bit so that they can see the positive effect of exercises, no flare-ups. So it will make them to adhere more, and we're going to increase day by day, not by on the first day. These we manage, we saw. So all these adherence intervention, it is not like one factor we need to address. We can address them together or addressing them individually, like improving the self-efficacy by motivating them, or by giving good feedbacks. So we saw how, why we need to promote physical activity, how to promote, whom to promote, what to promote. I think these will enable you to promote physical activity more in OA patients, and any doubts you're having, we can discuss now.
We're just running out of time, so we will have a discussion slightly later on after. What we have to finish.
Yes. Okay. Thank you everyone for listening.
Well, Rusty, you want to add something to this? Huh?
I think I'm saying on my profile,
Okay, so, okay. ಇಲ್ಲ ಅವನ್ನೇ ನಾನು ಇದೆ ಟ್ರಾಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾನೆ ಟ್ರಾಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾನೆ
इधे भी क्लिप ऑन बना सर इधे भी क्लिप ऑन बना
அது நம்ம சட்டிக்குள்ள உள்ள
நிக்குமான்னு தெரியல
அதுல இல்லப்பா இதுலப்பா நான் மவுஸ் கொடுத்தேப்பா மவுஸ்
அண்ணா ஒரு நிமிஷம் பார்த்து Start, sir. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am Revati. I am currently working as a physiotherapist in Government Hospital, Kuttalam, near Kumbakonam. I am here to explain how can we enable our patients, especially now I am focusing on low back pain patients, to function better. How do we consult them? What is the value of our talk to them? It is kind of related to Vignesh last part, like how we facilitate. It is more or like similar. Just I am going to go in deeper, like how we facilitate them more to function better. How can we do it? By communicating with them. That is our main focus. So it was like 2 or 3 years before I was working here, and one patient of 35 years old, she came to our clinic and she was so afraid actually. She told that, sir, I am having so much severe pain, and when I do any activity it is aching. Whatever I do, I am not able to do any activity. And she has 2 children who she has to look after, and moreover she lives in a joint family where she is the only daughter-in-law. So 2 more brother-in-laws are there, and she has to maintain all the household works. So and her household works mostly dependent on bending activities, since it is since she has to cook for a large family. She has to do a lot of household works, and she used a traditional way of cutting vegetables, not like with knife and forks, but she has to sit on the floor and she has to do arvamana, like she has to do the traditional way of household chores. So her concerns, when we talked to her more, her concerns were, she told that when I took a MRI, as per doctor's advice, they told that I had a disc bulge over L5 and S1. So is it very serious that I should be very afraid of, because everyone panics me so much. And moreover my doctor also, and moreover my relatives who had these issues also, they told me not to do any bending activities or sit on the floor and spend more time on bending activities, because it may definitely aggravate your pain. And these factors was troubling her so much. So when a patient with such concerns comes to our clinic, what can we do about it? So when she came, we were also very, not we, sir was clear, but I was like, okay, how we are going to treat her. So before going on to that, we must know that whatever treatment we give, let it be exercise or IFT or traction, whatever, let it be that, whatever, irrespective of the treatment we give, there are also some other factors which is getting involved along with the treatment. These are the contextual factors. That is, which are other factors which which gets involved along with your treatment. So these contextual factors can be internal, or it may be external, or maybe relational. Actually, there are so much contextual factors, but I am going to talk about which is related to how we communicate. What are the contextual factors which can affect our way to communicate? Okay. So the internal contextual factors may be the patient's behavior, like the patient's past experience with pain, whether she had a severe low back pain last time and she was not able to get out of the bed. Obviously, she will be too much afraid of it this time. And also her expectations, like how she has thought that this pain will progress or how it will resolve and things like that. And also what and all information she has got from the peer group or medical professionals, everything will have an effect on her treatment. And talk about external contextual factors, it depends upon which clinic she goes to, whether she believes that the clinic is in high setup and she thinks that if she go to this clinic she will get definitely cured, or she is going to a medium setup, or the environment where she goes, everything matters. And the relational contextual factors is what we are going to give much importance about. It is the way we communicate with our patient. When the patient comes, how we address their problems, how we are going to treat them, and how we are going to make them feel better. So all these factors, whatever I spoke, her past experiences, the environment, the way we communicate, everything will have effect on our treatment. It may be nocebo or a placebo. It may increase her pain or it may alleviate her pain also. So how these factors could cause a placebo or a nocebo is, here what we should concentrate more actually, because the way we consult them, it is going to decide whether she is going to have a nocebo effect or a placebo effect. That's why it is important, like how we address the patient regarding their past experiences, the information she got through other sources, and the information we are going to communicate, and how we are going to change the biased information they got from the other professionals also. So how it is going to create a nocebo and placebo effect is that, obviously we all know placebo, it is nothing but it will have a positive effect on your treatment. So here our positive or optimistic view on her psychosocial behavior, it is going to induce a placebo effect. It just acts like analgesic pills or something like that, like it will activate your endogenous opioid system, thereby alleviating pain, and also it deactivates the pain processing centers in our brain. Meanwhile, the nocebo is exact opposite. If you are if you are communicating with them with so much pessimistic view, if you make her afraid more, then it is going to have a negative effect. Like it will deactivate the endogenous opioid systems and it will activate the pain processing centers in our brain. It is simple as that. So, since these factors can create this nocebo and placebo, how in our clinical setup can we lessen the nocebo and enable her to function better? So, that's what we are going to focus from now on. So, before we go and talk to her, we must know from where to start, right? Like suddenly a patient comes and tells you, and you don't know what to say and which to say what first. First, you have to listen whatever she says, and how much ever she says, you have to listen. Studies show that if you are not patient enough to have their concerns or these things, they get irritated and they become little upset, and that will also have an effect on your treatment outcome. So first listen whatever they say, like you must have time for that, like you should not hurry in this process, because after listening only you will come to know that what is bothering them and what is not. So then only we will know that what information they have got through other sources. Then we will differentiate whether the information they got through other sources is going to create a nocebo effect or a placebo effect. We will obviously know that if it is going to create a nocebo effect, the patient itself will be afraid and terrified so much. And after differentiating it is nocebo or placebo, if you think it will create a nocebo effect, then how will you change it? Like how will you change the perspective of the patient? So that's what. So for the first 4 points, first when a patient comes to you, just be warm and confident and be ready to listen all the things. And don't ask closed question, rather ask open question. For example, you can ask her, what do you think might have caused this low back pain, so that she might have, oh this might have caused or this might have caused. So there might be so much reasons for her. But if you just ask her, did you lift a weight a day after before, or did you have so much household work, this thing, these are closed questions, so that we are not giving her to, we are not letting her give her points about it. So next is, you have to investigate like what are her preferences, like what she thinks of the treatment, or what she expects out of the treatment, or how she expects the pain will go down or go up. So everything we have to get through them. And you also have to encourage patients, like what else do you have, any concern, or what questions do you have, or any other doubts regarding this condition you have, what you expect from me, what I have to do, everything. And moreover, when asking these or while looking at them, just use verbal and non-verbal communications which is optimistic to them. That is, you have to show her empathy and support, so that she understands that you understands her. If the patient comes and she says, I am having severe, then if we say, okay, we'll see, like that. If you say that, she may get offended. But if rather than you just say, okay, I have been through this phase myself, or I have seen patients going through this, and we will take care of it. And here sometimes Actually, I got into this point because during my second or third year, I have a severe trapezius strain, and that's when I felt that what pain would really look like on a patient. So I literally cried. Actually, I literally cried, and sir, I told sir that I am so afraid. Even I was able not to put my shoulders down. Actually, so that kind of frighten or that kind of pain and afraid, now we have to treat that actually. And you have to have a psychosocial talk and say about the peer group or how the other patient coped up and how she can overcome it. So all these things you have to do in the consult. So these are the things for the first 4 points, like listening and getting the information and differentiating it. So once you know that the information she got is biased and it is creating a negative effect on our treatment, then how would we change it? So first is obviously we are going to be optimistic that it is fine, we are going to overcome this, or at least we will try to overcome this. And we have to explain how our treatment works, like what treatment we are giving. We have to explain her everything, because for example, simple, if you take modality IFT, we just say that every time we keep IFT to a new patient who is having that, they will ask that what it will do, whether it will have a shock to me, or because everyone is in rural setup and all, if you keep, they literally think physiotherapy is current. So they will say, okay, fine, whether I am going to get a shock out of it. So whatever treatment you are going to give, you just say that it is just going to give mild muscle contractions, and you are going to have a little, you will feel better after this. Or during exercises, you just say that how exercises is going to help her a lot. And moreover, when there is a mirror feedback mechanism, or like when she sees her back moves, even though when it is pain and it is not creating more pain, she will learn that this pain is not going to cause her more pain, and she will indulge in it again and again. So this kind of over treatment with mirror feedbacks, it has proven to be shown well effective in chronic LVA patients. And moreover, we should, while explaining this, we should also not add fuel to the fire. Like we should not say that we should not say anything that makes her anxiety level go up. For example, if we are going to a medical professional and they say that there is nothing we can do more, your bone has degenerated, so you have to just go with it. You can't accept that, right? When you go to a patient and just say you are okay, fine, you are wrecked and it is fine, you have to go and adjust with it. Instead, we can say that instead of saying like there is nothing we can do more about bone regeneration, we can be optimistic about our impairment. We can say that bone degeneration is as common as we get old. Like our hair is black in the young age, but as days goes by, it turns grey. It doesn't mean that it is going to affect so much. So like that, bone degeneration is a common wear and tear process as you age. So there is nothing you should be more worried about. And also the disc bulge in our patient, she was concerned about disc bulge, and that's how when you will explain her that how disc bulge alone can cause her low back pain, and how much common is the non-specific low back pain. And also you just tell her that even if I take a MRI of a 30-year or 40-year-old woman who is not having low back pain, may it also get a MRI report as there is disc bulge as L5, S1 or some other areas. So that's why we will also say that to a patient, like that's why in MRI the last line will be to correlate clinically, because whatever it is showing, it does not have to reflect directly into it. We have to correlate with the clinical symptoms. And moreover, usually they say that the disc has bulge and it is compressing the nerves, these things. So when people hear that their nerve is getting compressed, they become more afraid. So we used to say that you don't need to get afraid until you have these three symptoms, like when you are not feeling any sensation over the area. For example, if it is a lower limb, I will just ask them like, are you having sensations normal in your both legs and your genital areas? Are you able to feel the water, something like that? And I will just ask them whether they are feeling like when you walk, if they say that I am not able to walk or do things, I just ask them whether you are not able to walk because of a pain or because you feel like fatigue or weak to take a step. So next question is that whether she is having difficulties with bladder and bowel movements, like whether she is having urine incontinence or she is having less sensation over the genital area. So if these three answers is no, then I will tell her obviously that when there is a nerve involvement and when you should be afraid is that these three things actually. If you are better with these three, then as of now you don't need to worry about the nerve. It will be alright. Okay. And next thing is that instead of looking or making her worry about her impairments more, we should concentrate more on her capabilities and activity and participation. We should tell her like how still she can engage in her activities, how she can further do her activities, but not at a stretch itself, but little by little, how she can do her works gradually. So how we are going to make it happen without treatment. So that all it matters. So this is to change the information, biased information they got. What if the patient comes to you directly? So what information you should give? The same thing, okay, I left this. The same thing like apart from this also you have to do the, not only with talk, you have to communicate non-verbally also, like having constant eye contact, making them feel that you're actually listening, like leaning forward or have for head nodding, such things like that. So what if the patient comes to us? We are the first ones. So as we know, since these contextual factors is going to have a large impact, so we should be very careful on what we speak actually. So we should be simple yet clear to tell her about her condition, like simple things like you if you talk about lumbar stenosis, lumbar spondylosis to a patient, she won't understand actually. So you have to see what is her education level and you have to explain the condition according to her level. Then only she will able to understand, then she may think that it is fine. Because if you use a complicated words or unknown words to anyone will get afraid. Okay. And the same thing, explain how non-specific is most of the LVAs and things like that. And explaining our treatment, like how it is going to work, and how she should promote her activity level. We usually say same example like Harivansh says most of the time to every patient I know, like if you keep a cycle and if you're not going to ride it, obviously the chain will get rusted. The same thing applies to our joint. So if you keep on riding it only, then only it will be flexible, then only it will be able to move freely. If you're restricting it and if you're keeping it aside, it is not going to help you. And while we are being optimistic, we should make sure that we are not too much optimistic. We should have a level like we should not get on the negative side also, we should not get to the too much positive side also. For example, I can't tell my patient that it will be completely alright, I assure you 100% and you will run in a marathon or something like that. We can't assure things like that. And moreover, when we are saying this, we must also say that it is natural to have flare-ups, it is natural to take days to decrease little by little, because not only these contextual factors come into play, the natural history of the disease also comes into play, and what other confounding variables also is there. Everything can affect. So not to be 100% sure about the outcome you are going to give, but be optimistic. Okay. And if we are following this, and if we are concentrating on our communication, how we talk and what we talk, and how optimistic we are, how we are going to change the perception of the patient regarding the biased information. If we are able to communicate better, we can less nocebo and we can make her function better. So this is the graph, like when there is no positive, only then when there is only treatment is given, and if you have a negative effect, and if you have a positive effect along with the contextual factors. So the muscular disorder high level is coming low here. So that's what I want to say. Feel free if you have any questions or how to address a patient, because we know everything theory, but practically if we are talking to patient, we might have certain difficulties because we used to have more in rural setup also, here also. So if you want to be sure like what to talk,